In the recent trends that have been taking center stage politically, President Uhuru Kenyatta has kicked out politicians from key positions in parliament, this in both in the National Assembly and in the Senate. What is the game plan? Will there have recent change in leadership taking place at the National Assembly with the removal of the majority leader, Honorable Aden Duale? He was replaced by Honorable Amos Kimunya. Will he deliver? Well, we shall be putting into perspective this and much more this morning on The Viewpoint. And joining me, I'm joined by Alex Manyasi, who is to my left, governance and policy expert. Karibu sana, Alex.
Asante sana.
And to my extreme left, I'm joined by retired Major Peter Mwithi. Karibu sana, Major. Yes, and remember, we value your feedback. Even as you continue with this conversation, we shall be joined by Karlmax Odhiambo, who is a governance and policy expert, as we continue with this conversation. But we would like you to be part of it. The hashtag is Good Morning Kenya, at Ram Maguko, at Doreen Arange, at Ray Manyara, at Jane Wamboye, and at KBC Channel 1. Make sure that you send in your feedback and your thoughts. Remember, we are live on Facebook and on our website at www.kbc.co.ke. Now, gentlemen, let's get things going. But before that, disclaimer. Comments shared during this live discussion do not reflect the stand of the Kenya Broadcasting Corporation, nor do they, neither do they reflect the stand of Good Morning Kenya, nor me as an individual. Now, Manyasi, coalitions, I'm looking at what Machakos Governor Alfred Mutua, he said this, he had dismissed the ongoing coalitions building in the country. And he said only a radical shift in politics can lift the nation from the current socio-economic crisis. What are your thoughts? Do you agree with that kind of, with that notion? What change do we need?
Ram, to a large extent, I agree with Alfred Mutua, even though I have never taken him seriously as a person, because he's a very he's a PR guy, so he plays to the masses.
I saw him in a video speaking in Luo.
Luya, and also.
Luya also?
Yes,
okay.
and so he knows how to play the games of politics with Kenyans, and he knows that if you speak someone's mother tongue, then you're more likely to be endearing yourself to that community. But having said that, I guess the realignments, as we are seeing them, are more political than anything else. Of course, I say they're more political because the engagements, as we see them today, are meant to consolidate support. They're meant to ensure that bills of parliament, for example, are passed without hitches. They're meant to build bridges. They're meant to create a scenario where the political class is kind of realigning, of course, partly because of 2022. But having said that, I guess as a country, there are many things that we still need to deal with. Our politics is very far from being the ideal. And I say very far because the intentions of elections is usually not to put people in office, but to make life better for the common person. And therefore, when that does not happen, then of course the politics of the day fail to get to the aspirations of the people who put them in office. And therefore, for me, the most important part of any coalition building or any realignments in politics should end up and must end up with the Kenyan people having a better life, improving the economy, and ensuring that the young people of this country have jobs and have businesses to do. If it doesn't end up in that, then we need to question the very intention of any coalition building. And of course, looking at politicians and looking at what Junaid Mohammed said yesterday, for example, in Parliament, when he was saying, when you see us following Raila like cows, it is a testimony to the fact that it has nothing to do with anything else. But for him, he follows like a cow. I'm just saying what he said because that's what he said.
He said that even right now he will now do it even better
yes,
than he used to do it before.
Yeah, and he was advising and he was talking about Duale and why he needed to have done that. Is because once you do that, in Luo Nyanza, for example, and as long as you're that cow and you have the support of Raila Odinga in Luo Nyanza, then you are assured of re-election. And for most of these politicians, even if you look at the headlines about Raila, the allies pushing him to run for 2022, it's because most of them know and they hope that once they have the endorsement, his endorsement in certain regions, then they automatically go through. It doesn't matter anything else. And so the Kenyan people, and I've said this many times, that the Kenyan voter is under siege, and the Kenyan voter is the biggest saboteur to the success that we hope to see. And I say that because the person who has perpetuated all this is actually the Kenyan voter. We are having people make noise now. We are having people talk about the economy. We are having people talk about COVID-19 and the handling and the likes. But when it comes to 2022, if we will not have a scenario where you will see how Kenyans will change the way they think. And you'll be surprised by the way the game will no longer be about economics. You'll be surprised by how the game will no longer be about what did you do or what did you not do. And I have for many times given reference to reasons why Peter Kenneth, for example, cannot get elected in this country, and yet his track record is known. Raphael Tuju was kicked out of Rarieda, and yet at that time he was the best performing member of parliament just because he disagreed with Raila. We have many instances of politicians who've done pretty well, and yet they have ended up in political oblivion because of not riding in a certain way, which is very unfortunate.
Now in one of our dailies, we have United in Fear. There is a palpable anxiety over Kenyatta's succession. If in 1960 there was fear of domination by big tribes, today there is fear that individuals could be rendered irrelevant if they don't get into the right formation. That is how it is indicated in one of the dailies. And which brings me to you, retired Major. What do you think about these political formations? Are they for the interest of the Wanjiku? And even as you answer that, you can also highlight to us, these formations, is it all about identifying yourself with an ideology or identifying yourself with an individual?
Thank you very much, Ram, for having me once again to discuss these important issues that affect our country. To answer your questions, let me give a very brief synopsis, the history of the relationship between the President Uhuru Kenyatta and our Deputy President, because their relationships are the ones who are going to determine the destiny of where the politics of 2022 will go. First of all, soon after the election, soon after the end of the rule of Mwai Kibaki, these two gentlemen joined together. And they joined together under the coalition of the Jubilee. And they wanted to have the presidency of this country. And they did very well. We saw them campaigning together, calling one another, William, my friend, and they put a lot of energy. There was synergy in that campaign, which culminated to a very, very close friendship of trustworthy from each other. And then when they got it the first time for 5 years, they again went for the other 5 years, which was very controversial. We saw Raila bringing a lot of issues after that election, going to the judiciary, seeking for there was an annulment of that election, and this did not augur very well. But they pushed on together. We saw them going to ICC, you remember? And they had a common factor, they was friendly. Yeah. They came back again, and you saw how they went in a motorcade right from JKA through Mudhurwa, in spite of the security risks that many Kenyans complained of their own lives, of their own president and the vice president. They were so together. And Ram, don't forget, they were so together, which resulted in having a white shirt like my friend is wearing here, tie, having speeches on the same. They were together. There was unity. Then where did the rain beat them? Because as we are talking now, Ram, there is a bit of separation between them. You understand?
Yeah.
So now it brings to the point that the Kenyans are knowing that these guys are not together. Their political ideologies have already changed. You understand? Now, the thing is, with the March handshake of Raila, changed all dynamics of the politics in this country. The deputy president did not like the idea of the handshake. And Mr. Raila, being a very, very senior politicians, and you remember at the background what had happened. It was so chaotic, the economy was down, there was always demonstration in the city, things were not well. So they thought maybe for us to bring order, political order in our country, let us shake hands. But it seemed as if this did not augur well with our deputy president.
So that is, in your opinion, you feel that did not augur well?
That would not augur well. And the intention of these two gentlemen, the ODM joining the Jubilee, was to bring peace. And the ultimate end, Ram, in all these confusions of politicians, although we know it is their own self-interest, they do not have very much the heart of Wanjiku. But these two gentlemen sat together. They did not include I think, this is my view, they did not include the vice president. So since that time, there was a big problem, and that's where it resulted in the Tanga group out of Jubilee, the Kieleweke, and these two functions brought a lot of friction, and we are seeing the alignment right now, which is very common even in Europe, even in America. Towards the end of any general election in any country, we are bound to see alignment to shape who will take the flag in 2022.
And that's what I want to find out from you. Do you think these alignments are for the interests of the Wanjiku?
Okay, in my own view, if I may read into the mind of our president and Raila, their ambition is to leave a solidarity foundation, a very firm foundation of the country where it is going to be very peaceful, and we do not have a repeat of chaotic general election. After every cycle of general election, we have a lot of chaotic. So they don't want that. I think their only ideologies is to do what? But being politicians, you know, they are politicians who are riding on this vehicle so that they can have their own self-interest. But for this, Ram, just give me a minute. For these two leaders, I think they want to bring unity. They want to leave a legacy of a united Kenya. And you can see from Raila, he's pushing for the BBI so that we can have the constitutional amendment, so that at the end of it all, it is not everybody, some people takes it all and the others. Remember, Ram, in the last election, Raila got over 5 million votes. You understand? And our president was ranging somewhere 6M, isn't it? Now, imagine someone who has a lot of aspiration in leading this country is left behind. He is nowhere after that election. He has 500 people. Where do you think he's going to go? So I think they are going to have a peaceful transition, and you can take it to the bank, Ram. We are going for a referendum, definitely, so that we can change the constitution, so that this post can defeat those who are going to miss the chances in the general election of 2022.
One word.
Yeah.
One word answer in terms of two options: individual or ideology. These alignments, are they based on any of the two, in your opinion, in your viewpoint?
According to the traditions and culture of our Kenyan politics, those are together. The ideologies are there, and you cannot separate the self-interest of any politicians in this country.
Or you cannot separate the individual from the
They are together. But from my own views, Ram, President Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga Although there are those statements of self-interest, their main big agenda is to leave a peaceful country, united country, where everybody is inclusive, including the smallest tribe of this country.
Manyasi, Machakos Governor Alfred Mutua said this, and I quote, "It's quite laughable that a leader can be rewarded and invited to the table not based on his ideology, previous work, or ability, but because of his tribe and tribal bloc." End of quote.
When Alfred Mutua says that, then my question would be, if you were to be asked what ideological stand Alfred Mutua holds, it would be very hard to point out. So,
okay. Why do you say so? Why do you say
because
so? You've not seen, based on his track record?
No, and this is why I say that. It's because, and I'm not dismissing the governor of Machakos for the sake of it, but at independence, if you look at the history and read the history of this country, part of the reason why Raila Odinga and Uhuru Kenyatta differed is because of the ideological differences of the two. One is that the late President Kenyatta stood for capitalism, and everything that he did was capitalistic. If on the other side, Jaramogi Oginga Odinga stood for socialism. So the ideological differences between the two was obvious. If you look at people like Masinde Muliro, for example, and the likes, I think, of Ronald Ngala and others, they wanted Majimbo, which we have today, and they fought for the smaller tribes. So the ideological differences, by that time, it was very clear, and any political formation was on a certain ideological agenda. As it is today, it's very difficult to tell which ideological differences which politicians hold. And that's why it makes it very easy, for example, for different formations to move from different parties and join others and form coalitions. And therefore, it means that either they were on the same page in terms of, if you want to say that they had any ideological arrangement or thinking, because if they didn't have, then it may not be possible, for example, to say that we want to form a coalition with another party. And if there are differences ideologically, then we are also trying to say that unless those ideologies are the same, it means those formations will never hold.
Let's take a look at how, back in 1960, when KANU was formed, we had formations, individuals forming KANU from different regions. Some from Rift Valley, Western Kenya, and coast that had rejected positions given to them in KANU at the Kiambu meeting, where we had the Kokorel, where we had it was what formed the symbol of KANU. But looking at how KANU formed back in 1960, the formation that was there, the idea, the agenda that was there in forming KANU in 1960, is it the same that can be copy-pasted with the ideas and agenda that is there currently in our current political party formations?
No, it's not. It's not because, and I say that because as it is today, the ideals and the aspirations of the people who are forming those formations was different from what it is today. And the major departure between then and now is that you will find that most of the founding politicians then had certain ideas about what they wanted to see. And because that did not happen, the politicians who have come in now have completely disregarded what the intentions were then. If you went to Western Kenya, for example, what Masinde Muliro believed in may not necessarily be what Moses Wetangula believes in, and Amani, ANC, Musalia Mudavadi believes in. And so, unless we trace back, and that's why I have always insisted, even though some people have dismissed me, I've always insisted that we need about 3 political parties in Kenya. And these 3 political parties should not just be formations, but should be ideologically so different, such that if I want to join a certain political party, or I want to vote for a certain political party, then I want to vote for that party because I know that their intention and their ideal and their ideology is that they want devolution to be strengthened. For example, today, the Right Honorable Raila Odinga is together with the Honorable Uhuru Kenyatta. The two of them were in opposing directions when we voted for this constitution. And therefore, the basic question to ask is, ideologically, are these two individuals thinking together? Your guess as good as mine. So if we think about the direction we want to take as a country, and the reason why I keep insisting that political parties should be formations of certain ideological ideas that we can bank on, so that if I want to wake up in the morning and go and vote, I should not be voting for individuals, but I should be voting for that political party because I know that when they get into power, the agenda they're going to have and they're going to advance is what I stand for.
When you look retired Major, when you look at the political party formations that we have currently, we are aware that from there are leaders who rejected KANU and went ahead and formed KADU. Now, looking at the current state of the nation, with the current formation of political parties, is it the same? Do we still have the same mantra, the same ideologies of forming political parties now, as it were back in in the 1960s?
Ram, let me make it very clear to our viewers that these people called politicians, the main agenda, most of them, very few, most of them, their main agenda is self-interest. Wanjiku is across the bridge, very far away in the desert, somewhere there. They are not with it. And I would like to support your idea that you brought ideologies. Remember, during the Pan-Africanism, when most of the countries in Africa were struggling to remove the yokes of colonialism in Africa, there was what we call statesmen. The statements were there. The statements of during that time, during Pan-Africanism, during the struggle from the colonialists, were not very much interested in themselves. They were interested in ideologies, issues. How do we govern our young nations after independence? You remember? We have statesmen like Mwalimu Julius Nyerere, how he brought socialism in Tanzania. He almost died poor, if you'll agree. We have statesmen like Kenyatta. He was a statesman until that time. Touch a point about my brother here, who has said that they parted because of ideology. Remember, during 1956 election, when we had the first election in this country, Odinga was asked by the colonial government to form a government. But
Oginga?
I'm not talking of Raila, his father.
His father, Oginga Odinga.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know, they had what we call statesmanship in their hearts, rather than the behavior we are seeing of our politicians today. And he said this, and I may quote, he said, I cannot have the leadership of this country when Kenyatta is in Kapenguri. You understand?
Yeah.
I'm talking about statesmen. And I'm bringing an issue here that when I look at the behavior of our politicians today, although they have ideologies, what they are doing, they are carrying away those ideologies, the party mandates, the party slogans, the party opinions under the carpet. They bring their own interests. What we are seeing today is a coalition for the interests. But however, there are very few politicians that we have who still have the additions, the mix-up of the statesmanship. They can even die for this country. But I can assure you, Ram, without contradiction, if all factors are held constant, these politicians should drive this country's leadership through issues and ideologies. But what we are seeing is very funny. They are driving this country towards their own self-interests.
And
am I clear?
Yes, you are, and your viewpoint has been really clarified there. I mentioned earlier that Karlmax Odhiambo will be joining us. So he is with us. Karlmax, karibu sana.
Thank you so much, Ram.
You have been observing and listening to what your fellow panelists have been saying in regards to the political party formations that we have. Give us your opening remarks. Political parties formation that we have currently. The question is ideology or individual oriented. Which is the way?
Thank you so much, Ram, and viewers. I agree with my fellow pundits that the political parties formation, in fact, I say across Africa, except for the few of ANC, South Africa, and the Ghana, I think the rest of the parties, they are all vested in individual interests. So that if I, Karlmax, I would love to get part of what I think is aligned to my my interest, then we'll coalesce, or maybe we come with some alliances with Manyasi and also Mbidi, then we agree, we say, you know what, we are now giving a picture of the nation, or we paint a picture of, you know, everybody is represented. But, you know, ideology is not simplistic as we put it. It's something that cuts across. It's something that needs to be felt with somebody in Marsabit, in Migori, in Lamu, you go all the way to Trans Nzoia or maybe Bungoma, because by the way, if you talk about an ideology of a party, then it's something that resonates with the citizens, it resonates with the economy, it resonates with the social aspect, it resonates, in all angles you look at it, it's something that needs to make all of us believe that there is something that we are fighting for. Okay. But if you look at it this way, where we are as a country today, I don't see so much of the ideology, because if really we have the manifestos read for you today, you will be you will be surprised to hear that what Jubilee has written is exactly what maybe the ODM or maybe ANC will be talking about. But you know, when they come together, or maybe when they are in different camps, they will speak in different languages, as if they will be read as THE, and you know, you don't pronounce it as the, you know. So basically it depends on which side of the political divide you are, then you will call it ideological, but I don't see that actually as the real picture of what we are in. Now, Governor Mutua said this. Why are you laughing, Alex? And I quote, okay. In those discussions, they don't ask you what skills and ideas you are bringing to the table, but what numbers you are coming with. End of quote.
Of course. However, I think even beyond numbers, my understanding is that the skills here, if it means book skills, that's a different discussion. But skills in the sense of a politician like Raila Odinga, for example, I like giving reference to Raila because, he's been in politics for so long, and he has like 9 lives. So if it's about political skills, then the political skills translate into numbers. Can an individual look at the formation of these parties based on just the numbers? We are saying that this man has the numbers, he has the people, so please join us. Of course. Without considering the skill. Of course. As the governor is saying. The skill, in this sense, the skill, you cannot have numbers without skills. And the skills could even be political. You don't have to have book skills. So in that sense, it's not possible to have no skills and have numbers. In the Kenyan context, in the African context, even the biggest of idiots, if you can allow me to use that word, if that person has the numbers, then it means that kind of person has some skill set which you don't have. That's why you don't have the numbers. That's why he has the numbers. Yeah, that's why he has the numbers. So you cannot say that it's not possible to bring, it's possible to bring skills without numbers. Where do you get numbers if you have no skills to bring numbers? And it's not possible for you to bring numbers without skills? No, you must at least have some political skills. That's why I tell you I disagree with Alfred many times.
Well, I'm looking at last week we had Wiper leader Kalonzo Musyoka and Chama cha Mashinani leader Isaac Ruto. They became the latest politicians to formally sign a cooperation agreement with Jubilee. Now, Kanu, remember, previously Kanu was also in agreement with Jubilee under this Baringo Senator Gideon Moi. They were the first to sign this in agreement with Jubilee. Now, could these alliances, let me come to you, Karlmax, could these alliances be building blocks towards gaining the necessary numbers that we are talking about, the necessary numbers and future political wins in the nation?
Ram, first of all, I think I will take it from the Wiper leader, first of all. I think from where I sit, that was a wrong move, and I don't think in his right way of thinking, or maybe coming up with some political muscles or strength, or maybe you need to control a certain populace, you cannot get to sign what we call, I think they call it cooperation.
Yes.
Now, you know, you can't cooperate with NASA, or maybe you have a coalition with NASA, you go cooperate with Jubilee, while you want this to be actually in black and white. And in essence, you will ask yourself, where was the party leader for Jubilee during the time of this cooperation? Oh. Where was the deputy party leader of Jubilee during this cooperation? So does it mean that the Wiper was signing an agreement or maybe a cooperation with some fellas who felt like, you know, we want to send a message? But having said that, I also think that it's a wrong move at a wrong time, because it doesn't make great impact when it comes to maybe Lower Eastern vote block, because somebody will ask that now, once you've joined, what else do you bring, or maybe what else are we going to benefit? Because at the end of the day, cooperation means that there are some benefits that needs to get to trickle back to the membership of the Wiper. But for Isaac Ruto, it's a good move. The reasons being, there is already jitters or cracks within Jubilee as a party. And so the Rift Valley would love to feel that, you know, as much as part of it is being pinched, punched, or maybe being blown, there need to be a replacement. And so because there was a vacuum, they feel completely, it's a political good scheme that, you know, we have to appease these guys that part of what we are fighting, it's part of what we are also replacing. So either way, it's part of you that is coming in. So for Isaac Ruto, that's a plus. For Wiper Kalonzo, that's a big negative and zero.
So why would you say for Isaac Ruto is a plus? Yes, you've highlighted those issues.
Yes.
But I'm trying to look at what Wiper leader Kalonzo Musyoka said. And he was talking about, you know, that in time you need to align yourself with the right people. You need to have cooperation agreement to take the country forward. He was alluding to the fact that we are looking at the interests of the nation to take this nation forward. That is still not a reason, in your own opinion, for him to join CCM and come together and have a cooperation agreement with Jubilee?
Basically, Ram, you have to look at it this way.
Yes.
You know, politics is actually, by the way, power is not discussed the way we are discussing it. Power is not actually discussed in crowds or maybe some marketplaces or maybe huge places. Power is actually transferred in a very serene, very quiet and a peaceful environment whereby everybody will never know exactly what is going on. So when you come out to tell people that you are going to sign a cooperation, and the cooperation, you sign it at a time whereby I think you cannot reap much about with it. But not only that, I have a feeling that being a political, being a party leader who also controls a number of members of members of parliament and maybe some senators, you cannot just get into such given corporations while you know very well that by this time I need to build a brand within myself. Let me get people to understand why we are on this side, or maybe what we are doing different, so that when you are going to negotiate with the people, you don't negotiate in terms of I want to support you, but in terms of we want to partner. So that somebody feels that there is a self of an engagement here whereby you bring something, I bring something. But on this, I think there was nothing much. But Isaac Ruto, actually, he gained a lot.
And I wonder, what does Wiper leader have to lose in this cooperation agreement? Retired Major.
Ram, let me quote one of my best political analysts in this country, Professor Manyora. I think you have heard him talk many times. And I'll also repeat what he says about politics is about numbers. What you bring on the table. What you bring on the table is important. Ideologies and other issues about Wanjikus comes later. I think anybody who joins a Jubilee to fatten the coalition, he has an interest. He has an interest because of his other leaders of that party. They'll get something in that cake. You understand? And then he'll amass a lot of numbers. I think numbers matter a lot in any coalition. And Ram, as we gear up to 2022, we shall see a lot of these coalitions, people coming in. And I'll very briefly tend to disagree with my friend about Kalonzo losing focus on joining Jubilee. Remember, Kalonzo is a very, very senior politician in this country. And in fact, if I'm not campaigning for him, but if you zoom a camera on him to try and see if he has any dents on corruption, on his leadership, on the loyalty to the president, I think he stands very tall. And I'm sure he'll join there and have a benefit towards the end of 2022.
So you're saying for him to join, to have a cooperation agreement with Jubilee,
anybody
was a good move from
anybody
him?
who joins and who is allowed to join Jubilee, he will have a part of the cake. He's not going to be a loser. Because what he brings on the table is a number. And when they are going to share this national cake, after the general election of 2022, he'll have to get something for his community, because our politics is very, very inclined to our communities. So he's going to have it. Anybody, and I wonder, Ram, the question you should ask here, what is it that our president and the ODM leader Raila wants to achieve? And I've already said here, if I read their minds, one is to leave a legacy of a united country, void of corruption, where even Ram today, he will get any post in this country in spite of where he comes from from this country. I think they want to have that legacy, and that legacy is going to be pinned on the BBI, which is going to bring the results of constitutional amendment. So they have these few posts there, so that when the election is over, nobody is going to cry and bring a lot of chaos. So to answer the weight of your question is that anybody, to my own views, that is going to join the Jubilee, then is going to benefit. Kalonzo is not going to lose. Now we are seeing Mudavadi struggling with his ANC to join there. Maybe he wants to have better terms.
To join where?
To join the Jubilee.
He has not said he's going to.
He has not said it, but he's also struggling. You know, this is politics. He's also struggling. There are some things going behind there. If he doesn't, then he'd automatically be on the opposition. And we need opposition anyway. And of course, if he's in the opposition, with the changes of referendum, I don't know how it will be, then the opposition will have a stake in the country.
But ODM is the opposition.
It's opposition, but now, with the cooperation with the Jubilee, I don't think whether it can muscle the Wanjiku's ideas at the moment.
Manyasi,
but let's wait and see it later.
Your view of this, your take?
The current political formations, of course, if you ask me, they are short-term. Kalonzo has been quoted saying that, of course, he's been in the cold for long. It's long since he was in office, and therefore it's expected. During his father's funeral, he made certain statements telling the president of this country with regards to the fact that he was going to support him without question. Of course, because of the way our formations are, when you're outside of government, and I'm sure that's also the same inclination that Raila Odinga will have. When you're outside of government, unless you have very deep pockets, it's very difficult to survive politically. And part of the reason why you have MPs and other people flocking towards certain individuals and certain parties is because they're gaining out of it politically and economically. If that wasn't the case, and then it would be very hard for someone to keep politicians. But having said that, I guess part of what gives Kalonzo Musyoka a plus more than Musalia Mudavadi, for example, is because Kalonzo Musyoka has gotten hold of the Kamba community. And you remember even when Senator Mudama then disagreed with Kalonzo Musyoka, he decided not to run for the Senate post because I think he sensed that he could have easily been embarrassed at the end of the day by not clinching the seat. So when you have your community in your hand, and any time there have been dissenting voices in Ukambani, they have always cooled down somehow in favor of Kalonzo Musyoka. So because of that, of course, someone like that being incorporated into the Jubilee side becomes easier because you know that if he has 10 MPs, then you have 10 supporters in Parliament.
If you look at what Karlmax had mentioned earlier, the agreement that is there between Wiper Democratic Party, Chama cha Mashinani with Jubilee Party, is it the best move for Wiper Party?
For the party, and I'll say what I've said again in terms of the negotiations and the economics part.
Yes, yes.
When you are close to power and you are therefore in power and you have access to the economics, then chances are that you will remain fluid up to the general election. And then that also means that you'll have a head start in terms of your ability to finance your election.
Because you'll be close to the heat.
Exactly. But when you are in the cold, you need to have the resources. Like Musalia Mudavadi today needs to have his own resources to make sure that he remains relevant as an opposition leader and to remain relevant in the sense that he needs to critique the government objectively to a point where Kenyans can see an alternative government in him.
Now,
if that doesn't happen, then him not being in government does not even help.
Let's talk about a few issues that were rising. Jubilee Asili. Karlmax, and I'm coming to you. In regards let me just take us back. Huh?
Yes.
Since 1992, those who have left their own parties have also retained the trademark of the mother party. Let's look at in August 1992. We had the main opposition party, which was the Forum for the Restoration for Democracy, that is FORD, which was founded by Mzee Jaramogi Odinga and Kenneth Matiba. Now, FORD broke into two parties, and we had the formation of FORD Kenya and FORD Asili. Right now, I'm looking at Jubilee Party Kenya, Jubilee Asili. Is this a repeat of history, Karlmax? And do you see us having a political party known as FORD Asili, and Jubilee Asili?
First of all, you know, I've been actually trying to wonder how the timing of the Jubilee Asili Center and the schemes behind having the Jubilee Asili Center. I think it's a way of the deputy president to reorganize himself, towards 2022. But again, it comes with a lot of questions, because you know, before you talk of Jubilee Asili, you'll have to know that if you go through the Political Parties Act, okay, first of all, that name will not go through. And the symbol is more or less the same. That will not even make them to register that. So whoever came up with that idea, I think it's misguided. And it's ill-timed, because that will not make them to go far.
It won't hold water. It won't stand the test of time.
Precisely.
Or it won't pull through. Which is which?
I don't think there will be anything called Jubilee Asili Party. Take it from me. Because if you go through the Political Parties Act with the same name, same symbol, or maybe more or less similar symbols, I think they will not. But maybe they might be having an idea of having other parties, so they concentrate people on the Jubilee Asili like a movement, while they are concentrating their forces towards a given political party that they have maybe registered through proxies and all that stuff. But again, this might not give him much strength towards getting out of Jubilee with a huge chunk. Because I think there's one mistake that the deputy president is making. each and every time there is this Oster process that needs to take place within the Jubilee quarters is part and parcel. Because the other time he was actually present in State House, okay? And when Washiali and whatever, they were ousted, he was there. You know, history won't actually get to say that, you know, you just sat and you didn't talk. Or you are part of those people who are present during the process of oustering these guys. Number two, it is not in any way possible that you want to convince somebody, or maybe Langat, or maybe Chepkoech, maybe in Kericho, that, you know, I went to KICC, I didn't love the process of removing maybe Aden Duale, but I was there, I did nothing, okay, and left, and more or less you could see the body language like the president is actually informing him, you know, I'll give you a call. Now, the problem with that is this. You are confusing your supporters. You are making them to believe that either you are okay with everything that is going on, but you don't want to tell them exactly your next move, or you've been punctured completely and you don't have any other option but now to abide and lie low. So these two scenarios are going to be very difficult for him, because like the other time, you could hear some of his support, I mean, some of, I call them, the members of parliament who are actually aligned to him, they actually threatened not to attend the PG, that is for the KICC, right? But you could see only 5 members, jocosely, ironically, only 5 members actually missed that PG. Now, the question is, if we talk of registering a party, and if you look at it in terms of numbers, you can only, out of almost 190, you can only get 5 to align to you. Or maybe you cannot actually stage a walkout over this meeting when you are aggrieved. Then you are telling Kenyans that even the Jubilee Assembly might not hold for long, because it doesn't make sense to me for now that they have actually they have come up with a parallel center, but at the same time they still call themselves to be the Jubilee. So that will really give them a lot of problems moving forward.
Ram, I don't know whether to differ with my Karlmax, or this Karlmax is that Karlmax you read in the university. I don't know. But to answer that question is, let us look at the recent statements of our president during the PG meeting of the members of the Jubilee. He stated categorically that he's doing all these reshuffles because these fellows who are regarded as dissidents, they are not loyal. It anchors on the word loyalty. Ram, today, if you're a commander, let me give this example because I come from the military. Those who are behind you, if they don't support you to achieve your agendas of the big 4 agendas and all that, you are there to echo the sentiments of the ruling party, which is Jubilee. You go against that, you are perceived to be a dissident. So what the president was doing is actually sweeping those that is not ready to work with. And he has stated many times that now that I have relieved your duties of the chairman of these committees, which you are doing on behalf of the party, then you can go now and do anything else. That saying, to my understanding is that Jubilee, whether it is going to be named Asili or whatever name it's going to have, because it will have coalitions of other members like KANU, like Wiper, it is going to have a different look, but it will remain the same. What is happening here and why the president is doing all these things, he just looked at these people who he has already taken away. They were not loyal. It was a question of loyalty. And Ram, let me tell you, why these people were removed from the party is because they thought 2 years away from the 2022 general election, President Kenyatta is irrelevant. But they forgot that this is the president for the period of 2 years, which is the preparation for 2022 general election. They were writing him off. And they were maybe, to my own views, they were looking at our deputy president, knowing that this guy is going to be the president. And that answers the question, Karlmax, if you'll agree with me, that our politicians, their main objective is self-interest. If deputy president becomes the president, what will I gain? So they were supporting him instead of going to the last minute of being loyal to the party leader, who is Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta.
Manyasi, Jubilee
But
party,
have I made it clear, Ram?
your point has been heard.
Thank you.
Yes, Manyasi.
Ram, one of the things that I have seen, and in response to Jubilee Asili, I have spoken to some of the politicians who are in Tanga. And before this purge actually started happening, and some of them don't talk to me anymore, because I told them, you're speaking too soon, you're speaking too loud, that voice that you're having should not be coming from you. That's what I told one of them. And she doesn't talk to me anymore, because it came to pass. And I was giving advice at that time, and I said, the Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya, unless he chooses to leave, unlike before, he cannot be fired. And therefore, he's going to be the Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya up to 2022. And therefore, in terms of politics, he's a front runner. They did not have to make it look like he needed his voice to be amplified on top of the world for him to be a front runner. He didn't have to. Secondly, at that time, I felt like when I was talking to those politicians, I felt like they were pushing the president and the deputy president, they were putting a wedge between the two. That was my feeling then. And you have seen what has happened today. They have literally put a wedge between the deputy and the president. That's why when Karlmax talks about, for example, the DP attending meetings that the president is attending, it's because he's in the presidency. And constitutionally, they cannot be removed from each other. Now, whether the deputy serves at the pleasure of the president is different from the previous dispensation, where the deputy was not actually a deputy but a vice president, in the sense that President Moi or Kenyatta or anyone else will have woken up and said, I have replaced my vice president. But not anymore. That cannot happen. And therefore, for the Asili or not,
Jubilee Asili,
sorry. Jubilee Asili or not, the current DP will remain being DP, like I said, unless he chooses to leave. However, Jubilee Asili, again, if you asked me, again, is a frustration that is being shown out there that, look, it's being called Asili because these were the ideals that we had in the initial time, but this has since been negated. However, when you go and form a parallel system, if it's going to be registered, who is going to be the party leader? Who is going to be the leader of that party? Those are the questions that need to be asked. If someone will make a mistake of putting the DP, for example, the party leader of Jubilee Asili, then that will create constitutional questions about his position in government.
Now, let me just get the prediction from the panelists, because there are so many, well, previously on this show, we've made so many predictions that have actually come to pass, while others have not come to pass. What is your prediction, each one of you? Do you see the formation of a political party known as Jubilee Asili? Manyasi.
To be associated with the DP in the next 1.5 years, no.
No. Retired Major, do you see the formation of a political party known as Jubilee Asili?
You see, Asili or not Asili, the politicians are very funny. All these politicians were once in Kanu, they were once in Kadu, they were once everywhere.
But do you see the formation of
well, the formation is going to be there, but time will tell. Let us see what that name will be. The symbol, according to Karlmax said, the flag and what have you. After consolidating all these other parties who want to join Jubilee, I think Ram, they are going to sit down and say what this party will be. And Ram, to wrap up this, because sometimes you have a tendency of not giving us the last minute to give a word. The most important thing about these parties, whether it's a coalition, whether it's a what, all what Kenyans need is peace at the end of 22 general election, unlike the other general elections. So when we gear towards the end of our discussion, these panelists will be very important to this country to tell them about issues of peace. We don't care what they're going to do. And remember, Ram, any government which is propelled by any party is very important in determining what the shape of the political destiny of the country.
Let me come
because
to
it has
Karlmax.
the resources, it has the power, it has the muscle.
Let me come
so
to
the
Karlmax.
Jubilee Assili you are talking about, Ram, will always spearhead of whatever the name it will be and its agenda.
Formation of Jubilee Assili political party. Do you see it forthcoming?
Ram, in this show, go and check your clips 2018, I think October. I predicted that Jubilee will crack, and it did happen. I said here that the House business leadership will be changed. It happened. I predicted here that Gideon Moi will come to the limelight and it will shock people how he will be doing his stuff. It happened. I talked about Isaac Ruto and William Kabogo coming out more than just what you see about with them. It's going on.
Seeing a new
and I said here,
coming up.
and I said in this show, and get back and check your clips, I said here that Raila Odinga is going nowhere, and whatever they are crafting is going to be another juggernaut that will crush almost all the competitors, him, Uhuru, and the team. And remember, I also told you that the referendum will peak, and it will be another thing altogether. Now back to Jubilee Assili and the other Jubilee. One thing you can take to the bank, there will be no party called Jubilee Assili. But the deputy president will register another party, okay, that he will use to actually, he will use as a vehicle for him to run for 2022. But again, if we will continue to make these simple mistakes of like you blow cold or hot, when you are actually being suffocated in a room, then he might even end up not even controlling part of that party that he believes he might be going for.
Now let's touch on one more issue. The Kitui governor, Charity Ngilu, has been accused of violating the constitution and provisions of the County Government Act, abuse of office, and failure to account for public funds. Yesterday, a notice of motion to impeach Governor Ngilu was served to the clerk of the County Assembly, waiting, tabling, and debate next week on Wednesday. What are your thoughts in regards to the impeachment now? Because we have been looking at Governor Anne Waiguru, and as a matter of fact, KBC will be covering the proceedings of Governor Anne Waiguru in a bit. Remember, it is now 9 o'clock. Once we get the link, we will be heading over to a location to get a view of the proceedings of Governor Anne Waiguru. But we're talking about Governor Charity Ngilu. What are your thoughts in regards to this?
Yeah, I wish the MCAs of Kitui were more cleverer. And introduced this motion much later. Because now what we're going to see is that even the Senate decision, if they're going to make that decision at the time when Ngilu, for example, will have been impeached, then the decisions will start changing in terms of whether that is the route that the Senate should be taking. And we say that because when you escalate, number one, these are all women. Yes. And therefore, if you're going to impeach 2 women out of 3, are they 3? Yeah, actually, out of 3.
We had 3. The former,
yes, now there are 2.
Now there are 2.
Yes, so if you're going to impeach the only 2 sitting governors, then that spells disaster for the country in terms of the optics. But secondly, and that's why I'm saying the MCAs of Kitui should have been brighter and halted this for some time.
It's a wrong timing.
It's a wrong timing. It's a wrong timing in terms of the coincidence of bringing 2 women, 2 only sitting women as governors. It's just wrong. It looks wrong. But having said that, I guess it also points to the issue about the chauvinism in our country and all over the place, in the sense that, and I have said this before, for example, Waiguru's way of doing things. And you have seen in the papers about she's being accused of being high-handed and being being a dictator and being rude. I had said those things. And the politics of the county is very local politics. So these leaders need to understand, especially the leaders that are coming from a national platform, need to understand that when you're dealing with local politics, it's very different. So if this rudeness is being anchored on part of the reason why it has ended up, I'm deliberately saying part of the reason why it has ended up in the Senate, then you risk a scenario where people are being taken out of office, first because they were rude, and then two, because they were corrupt. And so we will then lose the momentum in terms of thinking about being beyond reproach in terms of holding public office. Because the law is clear about even the chapter 6, the ideals of chapter 6, the spirit and the letter of chapter 6 was such that when you hold a public office, then you're supposed to be beyond reproach. And therefore, public funds, this country, even though in the region, Kenya is the third biggest economy on this continent. But however, if you think about the basic problems that a Kenyan goes through, then you start wondering whether we should be losing resources the way we lose them. It saddens me that the monies that we are sending to the counties, for example, when you have almost 70% going to recurrent expenditure, and the 30% that is supposed to be for development expenditure, almost another 70% of the 30% is actually lost in the process.
Now, you've highlighted quite a lot of issues there. Timing, expenditure. You've talked about, the gender issue. Let me come to you, Karlmax. Does gender have a role to play in this, and is this just a typical example of wrong timing?
Ram, thank you once again. First of all, forget about this thing called gender.
Why?
Because there is nowhere that you talk of a gender to be a disability. If you're talking about integrity matters, let us focus all our forces, all our minds, let us put it, on integrity. This thing of each and every time you want to talk of any office holder of a female character to become a gender thing, I think we are really missing the point. There is nowhere written in the Constitution that if we have some misappropriation or mismanagement or some corruption related cases somewhere, then we bring the card of a gender. I think that one now we need to forget as a country. But then, getting back to the Ngilu Waiguru thing, first of all, to me, I believe we don't actually do a lot of civic education to our members of county assembly. They are idlers. They don't exactly understand why they are in those county assemblies.
Why do you say that?
Reasons why I say that. I'm going to give you the 4 roles, just only 4 roles of the members of county assembly. Number 1, they vet and approve nominee for appointment in the county assembly. Number 2, they will approve the budget and the expenditure. If you read Article 207 of the Constitution, that is their work. These are the people who are supposed to be approving allocation and expenditure. Now, in line with that, you can even get back to read again the Article 201, 203, okay? This will enable them, I think this should also enable them to now understand how they can actually get to know the principles of public finances, the equitable shares, and other financial related laws. These are the people who are actually approving the county development plan. Now, there are other 4. Let me just now give you, there are 4 types of county development plan in the County Government Act. Number 1, we talk of County Integrated Development Plan. That is a 5-year plan. Now, we talk of County Sectoral Plan. This is actually a 10-year plan. We talk of a county spatial plan. That is clean 10 years plan. And we talk of urban, cities and urban area plan. Now, where do we get our members of parliament to come up with other given roles of impeaching a governor, okay, attending, we call them devolution conferences, running around with slay queens or maybe slay kings to be their part of other roles that they have decided to get to be part of what today we can discuss. Because if you ask yourself, with all those roles or with all those plans, do you still expect a member of county assembly to forget that we are the people who are actually approving a budget and the expenditure? We are the people who are actually oversighting these people to know what we've allocated, have they been used well? Now, if we get to a point whereby our members, members of county assembly are going to be like in peer pressure, whereby if we hear county assembly of, let's say, Kirinyaga, they have impeached their governor, we are running to also confirm to them that, you know, we are going to do the same thing in Kitui and all that. I think that is also very wrong with our county members of assembly. They need to come back and understand that we gave them a role of small countries down there so that they could do development for the people who never thought that there is any resource that can reach them. These are the people who can need, get me, these are the people who need to get the views and the opinion of their people that they can actually inject within the county government.
Now, George, you're saying that the county assembly of Kitui
yes,
does not understand its roles in your viewpoint.
It cuts across. So one thing I can tell you for free, Ram, this thing is going nowhere. Do you know why? One, you have to look into the political current situation as we speak. You know how politics plays. Let me tell you, you might have these county government bosses, we call them governors, having some issues within the county level, okay? Don't make a mistake of actually making that to look like a national thing. Immediately, Waiguru was removed from Kirinyaga, and they were trying to play this as a national politics. That is when they lost it. That is when they lost
All
it.
right, let me come
and
to
so, no, let me finalize on this.
I've given you enough time.
No, you talked about women being targeted, okay? And I wanted to tell you that these are not the only people, these are not only the governors who have been impeached in this country. Wambora is even the principal of those governors who have been impeached. Mwangi wa Iria, just get me, Mwangi wa Iria is here. Mutua, Kivuta Kibwana, Samboja, you can name them, Kericho, Sepkwon. Why are we not talking about them that immediately you touch on a woman now, everything turns to be another thing?
A retired major?
I think, Ram, for me to forget, you know, I'm very ancient in this panelist. I'm the oldest here. And let me say something for my brother here, Karlmax, before I forget. It seems as if Karlmax is a fortune teller. Fortune teller in the sense that what he has predicted over the last time in your discussions here has come to pass. So I would also like him before the discussion to tell us who he thinks on behalf of Kenyans will be the next president of 2022. Since he is qualified to be a very good fortune teller. Aside that, let's go to your question.
I don't know if I give you time to
Let me go to your question. Huh?
Yes, yes.
With the performance of the county assembly members, the presidency was set by Embu County, where they tried to impeach Wambora, who had so many acts, and he went through with it. And then they forgot, all the members of the county assemblies 47, they forgot. And then they were awakened from the slumber by the Kiambu county assembly members by impeaching one governor, former governor, Waititu. Now, the issue here is that I'll agree with Karlmax. The county assembly members did not know the powers they have under our new constitution, especially the devolution. And those powers have already very, very vividly been highlighted by my friend here, Karlmax. They did not know. They did not know. Now they are awakened. They know their work is to counter-check all the things that is happening in their counties. You understand? And now they are coming up. And Ram, let me assure you, they will see a lot of it has been ignited by the Kirinyaga and the Kiambu and the Embu. Most of them now, because they did not know what is happening there in their local assemblies, they will impeach many more. But to come to your question, Ram, about the gender issue, I will agree totally 100% with my colleague here, Karlmax, that it has nothing to do with the gender. When a thief steals, he is a thief. The gender does not come in. The background of the community where she or he comes from does not come in. A thief is a thief. And I was surprised to have one of the senior members from the ODM, I don't want to mention the name here, saying, this one, you are fighting a woman. We are fighting. A woman does not come in. A thief has no gender. He has no smell. A thief is a thief. He's plundering.
Manyasi says that this is just a case of wrong timing because we are looking at the current process of Governor.
I'm an old man. Let me follow my line of thought. It'll get lost. With women, it's not an issue. It is a tendency of our politicians when they are caught on the wrong foot, they hide behind their community, they hide behind their gender. What has gender got to do with stealing public funds or running impropriety in the office running of the county? So I'll agree. When we follow a thief, we should not follow a thief because of his ethnicity, because of his gender, because of where she comes from, his educational background, his religious background. We should follow a thief. But, however, I'll agree with the Karlmax again here. National politics will always play. Who funds the BBI in the county, in our counties? That question will tell us national government has a role to safeguard their members who are very loyal in pushing the agendas of the national government.
Now, Manyasi, when it comes to these impeachments that we are currently looking into, Governor Ngilu's impeachment is now looming, and it comes at a time where we're looking at Governor Waiguru's impeachment. Are you saying in your viewpoint that we need to take a pause of Governor Ngilu's case as we deal with Governor Waiguru's case?
I just said that the coincidence, the timing was wrong. But let me say a few things. Number one, before I go to the constitutional matters, number one is that all of us know, including my two friends, all of us know that there are men who are governors in this country who have plundered their counties. They have, should I mention names? And I wish you would have allowed me to
unless you have the evidence to prove that, but I give you 30 seconds because we want to head over to the
Some
Senate.
of those men are in court answering corruption cases, but they have just been able to manage their MCAs well. That's all.
All right. Now, I'm told that we have the proceedings, the live proceedings of Governor Waiguru's impeachment have taken place in the Senate. Remember, the Senate committee is looking into this, but we have to wrap this discussion here right now, gentlemen. So let's head over to the Senate, but that brings us to the end of Good Morning Kenya. See you again tomorrow morning. My name is Ram Agupo.